Hello. In this clip from our Justia webinar, Virtual Isolation, is hyperconnectivity helping or harming the legal professional? Brian Quinn talks about how technology and the digital world may be negatively impacting the lives of lawyers and law firms. If you want to see more Justia videos on law practice and legal marketing, be sure to subscribe to our channel.
But the purpose of doing this is to kind of set the stage for the fact that lawyers, by their profession and their chosen profession, have already experienced a lot of negative consequences just from being an attorney. There is a very well-known survey done by ALM Intelligence and Law.com. It was done first in 2020, right before the pandemic, and then again in May of 2022. And that survey was open to anyone working in a law firm setting, unlike the Krill study, which meant anyone who had a license to practice law and was involved in any area of the legal profession. It could be academic, it could be clerkship, it could be public service attorney, it could be private practice. The ALM Intelligence really studied life in a law firm setting, and the overwhelming majority, and I think it was 78% of the lawyers surveyed, believed that their mental well-being was worse off as a result of their chosen career. Worse off as a result of their career in the law. So, one thing is certain. The new normal that we have and will continue to enter into has been dramatically influenced by many, many things. And the negative impact of technology on lawyers, some people, as I said, we have anxiety problems already. Sometimes we're inundated with information that even exacerbates or elevates that anxiety. Sometimes it reminds us of tasks that we don't, that we haven't performed. Distraction, being able to get our work done, prioritizing, scheduling, these so-called smartphones and screen devices that I'm going to talk about in just a few minutes by giving you some specifics, have a useful purpose. But unfortunately, it's not always something that works to our benefit. One of the things I find is this new normal. Has it been influenced by the isolation many first had forced upon them, and then became quite accustomed to? And that was this world of hyperconnectivity. So what exactly is it? It's defined as the use of multiple systems and devices that may remain constantly connected to social networks and streams of information. Just another day in the life of all of us in this new normal world of ours, you might say, but at what cost? With more of us than ever working with these devices, some still working remotely, Zoom meetings, virtual court appearances, CLEs, and other virtual sessions became part of our daily routines. We see our colleagues two-dimensionally and even socialize with our friends on screens rather than face-to-face. With screen time rapidly increasing in our world, what are the effects on our brains? As we enter into this and continue to work through this virtual world. Yes, we leave work to go home and check work email. We're never turned off. Just like those mobile phones, we're on standby mode at the end of the day as we try to get some sleep after we've been hyper-activated by all these lights and all these devices and all this information overload. Like many people, as I said, we're trying to cope with a collective societal generational traumatic event, regardless of the type of law we practice. Many experts believe that while smartphones and other devices provide great benefits to our society, those benefits also come at a great cost to our mental health. And sometimes the overuse of devices can be connected to increased levels of anxiety, depression, poor sleep, and frankly, increased risk of accidents, car accidents. And I have some statistics on that. So one of the other negative impacts specifically I want to talk about is on the screen right now. And this whole idea of isolation and aloneness. And sometimes everybody thinks that solitude, loneliness, isolation are all one and the same, and they're really not. Solitude, the physical state of being alone, can be something that people want and desire. Some people think that loneliness is the same thing. It's not. And one of the things that people really don't realize, I think, is that widespread loneliness poses a serious health risk. I'm not sure if you have heard of the statement, I suppose, by the Surgeon General of the United States, who has declared the latest public health epidemic is loneliness. That widespread loneliness in the United States poses a health risk as deadly as smoking up to 15 cigarettes daily, costing the health industry billions of dollars annually. About half of U.S. adults say they've experienced loneliness, the emotional state of being alone. The emotional state of being alone. We know that loneliness is a common feeling many people experience. It's like hunger or thirst. It's a feeling that the body sends us when something we need for survival is missing. Millions of people in America are struggling in the shadows, and that's a problem. And that is why the Surgeon General issued the advisory to pull back the curtain on a struggle that too many people are experiencing. So hopefully that his declaration was intended to raise awareness around loneliness. And I think that it's really it was very timely. Unfortunately, we don't necessarily understand that technology has rapidly exacerbated the loneliness problem. One study cited in the Surgeon General's report found that people who use social media for 2 hours or more daily were more than twice as likely to report feeling socially isolated than those who are on such apps for less than 30 minutes a day. So social media in particular is something that I'm going to talk about, but I wanted to give you this lead in as to the fact that aloneness, solitude, loneliness are not necessarily all one and the same thing. And why are they important? Well, because of this thing called social isolation. Social isolation. And I used virtual isolation in my title. If we were to look at the symptoms of depression in the DSM, the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual, and remember 28% of lawyers suffer from depression. One of the symptoms, aside from feelings of hopelessness and sadness and suicidal ideations and things like that, social and or occupational distress and isolation. Social distress, social isolation, occupational distress, occupational isolation. Been in the DSM criteria for years, but suddenly those things mean something different to us, those words. Social isolation, yeah, I kind of know what that means. Occupational isolation, yeah, sure, because of the pandemic. There are some things that, and I pose this question to people, whether or not they are techno lonely. We have all this stuff going on around us, but are we really just alone a lot of the time? Some of the things that we don't really think about too often are what these devices are doing to our mental health. And one of the things that we that we have to look at in particular is this reward system in our brains. Okay. The negative impacts of technology on lawyers, the addictive cycle of stimulation, and hard to quit dependencies. And that's where dopamine comes into play. Dopamine is a brain chemical that's linked to motivation. It's released when we taste something delicious, after we exercise, when we have a positive social interaction. It basically rewards us for behaviors that benefit and motivate us to do them again. The reward pathways of the brain become active when either anticipating or experiencing rewarding events. Every time a stimulus response results in a reward, those associations get cemented in our brain. So we want to keep doing them. Whenever we receive a like or a kind comment on something we post on social media, we feel a sense of validation that isn't always healthy. So let's look at some of the devices that we use every day of our lives and how many of us have become shackled to our screens. Well, let's start at the beginning. Television. Yes. If you know the word television and you've been familiar with it for a long time, you probably know the name Nielsen. Nielsen has been doing surveys in the television industry for many years, probably since its invention and its inception, as long as I can remember. The Nielsen ratings, they would determine what people like to watch on TV, how often they watch it, how many TVs they have, and as you can see, Nielsen tells us about the demographics and of the based on age, on how much time is spent on TVs. And the older our population gets, it seems the more time they spend looking at televisions. But did you know that the percentage of homes with more than 3 television sets is 66%? That 49% of Americans say they watch too much TV. What's on those TV screens, folks? And what's it doing to our kids, to the young people? Well, by the time an average child finishes elementary school, the number of murders that they've seen on TV, real or enacted, is 8,000. The number of violent acts seen on a television by a child by the time they reach the age of 18 is 200,000. What do we get at? What's it doing to us? Well, I couldn't resist those other two statistics. The percentage of Americans who can name the Three Stooges is 59%. Name at least 3 U.S. Supreme Court justices, 17% of us can do that. So, not sure what that means, other than the fact that I found it interesting and I thought I'd share it with you. You know, many people think that businesses use their own products to promote confidence and loyalty unless they know something maybe that we don't. And I think that's maybe the case when you think about the iPad back in 2010, when its creator told us that this device, what it does is extraordinary. It's the best browsing experience we've ever had. Better than a laptop, better than a smartphone. Incredible. So when Steve Jobs was interviewed in 2014 by the New York Times, he was asked for a comment in response to, well, your kids must love the iPad. What did he say? They haven't used it. We limit how much technology our kids can use. Wow. Maybe he knew something that we needed to know back then. Yeah. Anyway, under the article, Steve Jobs was a low-tech parent. Interesting. So, what about the internet? Yeah, we all know about that. And of course, we can't live without it. There's no question. Way before the pandemic, many people, the high percentage of people were getting their news on social media. Facebook, 22% of internet time, 68% of us have a Facebook account in the United States. These statistics, frankly, change weekly. It's hard to keep up with them. But if you want to see something really scary, let's ponder some of these incredible statistics. This is with respect to the use of smartphones. That we unlock our phones 150 times a day. That 66 of the world's population shows signs of, and here's I'm going to give you some new words that you probably never heard of. Nomophobia. Nomophobia. 66% of the population show signs of nomophobia. Fear of not having your cell phone. It usually, the first symptom is usually this. Where's my phone? Something like that. Don't tell me that you've never felt that way. Where to put? I think I lost my. Yeah, but it's fear of not having your cell phone. Wow, because after all, your whole life is there, right? Where's my phone? A study in 2018 showed that American adults spend between 2 and 4 hours a day on their devices. This was in 2018, which added up 2018. This is 5 years ago. People were tapping, swiping, touching their phones 2,600 times a day. 2,600 times a day was the number of taps, swipes, touches, and types. When the pandemic hit in 2020, those numbers went up exponentially, given the need to replace in-person work and play with virtual alternatives. So, 71% of people sleep next to or with their phones. Yeah, 20% of people would rather go without their shoes for a week than take a break from their phones for that long. I'd rather not wear shoes. So, a lot of people, the times have gone up, the time of the number of minutes. And, there's an app on your phone that'll tell you how much use you have. Of course, my challenge is to try to get that number to go down. Because after all, when you have a situation where nearly 60% of people can't go an hour without checking their phones, and that 40% of people check it in the middle of the night, what do you think about that? So the study also indicates that 73% of adults, by the way, experience that anxiety, even a mild state of panic when they can't find their phone. So so we become so entwined with those digital lives of ours. They carry all our social media addictions with us 24/7. So we always have these connections at our fingertips. There's another new word that the technology has created. Ready for this one? I already mentioned these statistics about use. Here's the new word: phubbing. Phubbing. We've all been there. You're conversing with someone, suddenly they start checking their phone right in front of you. It's called phubbing, and it's a growing problem. What's it mean? It's phone snubbing, phubbing. People are so addicted to their phones that they can't put them down even when they're in the middle of a conversation. Nearly 32% of people report being phubbed 2 to 3 times a day. So as I said, it's also known as phone snubbing. It's the act of ignoring someone in favor of the phone. And it can happen in any conversation, whether it's with a friend, a family member, even a business associate. It can come in many forms. Sometimes it's a matter of just looking down. Sometimes it's almost the same as kind of gazing over someone's shoulder as you're having a conversation with them, as if they think that there's something else more interesting. You know that look. Tends to be rude and inconsiderate behavior. Conveys that the person on the other end of the phone is more important than the person that they're talking to. So, and by the way, it also damages relationships. 85% of smartphone users will check their devices while speaking with friends and family. 85%. Eye contact is super important in bonding and developing something called oxytocin, the chemical that builds trust and connection. oxytocin. A lack of eye contact due to phubbing can make people feel like you don't care about them or value their time. So think about it before you sit in front of a client or a colleague, or maybe even during a Zoom court appearance. What causes it? It could be due to boredom. It can be a way for someone to find a quick form of entertainment. It can also be due to someone trying to avoid an awkward conversation or feeling socially anxious during social interactions. So, it's kind of humorous when we talk about it, but the reason I mention it is not humorous because it can really happen when someone has become addicted to their phone, or just be suffering from some form of anxiety. Now, we've all been there. We've all seen people quietly having a meal as a family. Why are they quiet? Because all 3, 4, or 5 of them have a phone in their hand and they're looking down like this and they're not talking to one another. I tell an interesting story. I do a lot of in-person programs. I travel to many areas. Some of them are a little more remote than others. And I remember being in central Pennsylvania, which is rather rural. And I stopped there that night before my presentation. The next day, I was waiting. I went out and had dinner, and I walked into a restaurant, and the place was very lively. Everybody was laughing, talking, sitting at their dinner tables and enjoying each other's company and food. And I thought, oh, what a great place this is. Man, what a great find. So the next day I was referring to that place to the attorneys that I was presenting to. And they said, well, what's the name of the place? And they said, that's on the other side of the mountain. There's no phone service or internet connection there. So when forced, people, of course, couldn't use the devices. Then they spoke to one another. Okay. Anyway, well, I've saved some of the best statistics for last. 45% of people in the United States would rather give up sex for 1 year than give up their phones. 75% of Americans use the phone while on the toilet. 19% have dropped it in the toilet, and 12% have used their phones in the shower. But here's one statistic that is unfortunate, and it's in red. 75% of users admit that they've texted at least once while driving, and cell phone addiction studies show us that smartphone use is more dangerous on the road than alcohol use. And I have a site for this if you want to look it up. 26% of accidents involving cars are caused by cell phone use while driving. Thus, the driving while distracted motor vehicle codes, ordinances, and violations that we see. I don't know what it's called in California. Driving while distracted. Yeah, a lot of accidents, and it was forced. They forced to do that. Email, of course. I know you can't live without email, as opposed to what it's called. Yes, snail mail. I know. The way many people practiced many years ago. You already know how long I've been a lawyer, so I'm one of them. But I'll come clean with you. Come clean right up front. I never fully succeeded with this problem. I found a major distraction was my need to see my emails now. I'd be on a phone and I'd find my eyes glancing at my computer screen in order to catch a glimpse of the next email notification, kind of like the anticipation of a kid on Christmas Eve. And sometimes I have to confess while I'm doing a presentation like this on a screen, because at the bottom right-hand corner of the screen, there may be a little box that pops up that has an email notification from someone. And I'll divert my eyes to the right. It's just what it looks like when I do it. Once you see it, you feel compelled to respond. Many people start to feel that email communications are like a tennis match, that the sense to hit the ball back immediately. I felt like I was Federer or Serena, that receive, reply, receive, reply. So needless to say, it's a distraction, but I kept doing it because to me, they were 911 matters. They were priority. I had to remind myself of the days before they existed for me. But that pales by comparison to the text message. Talk about being shackled. And how much time we spend texting. And 79% of smartphone use is messaging, according to the people who make these devices. And we're talking about billions per day, billions, hundreds of thousands per second of text messages that are handled by certain companies. It's just amazing how much it's grown. And when you look at the statistics on how quickly people check your text notifications, a third of us check them within a minute. Over half within 5 minutes of being notified. Within 1 minute. That could be 5 seconds or it could be 59 seconds. Okay. But a third of us check our text notifications within 1 minute. 1 minute. Tell me that's not a distraction. If that's an accurate number, how can you be doing your work and not get distracted by text notifications? How? And yeah, social media. Well, I could spend an hour on that, and I'm not. But trust me, positive social experience takes me back to the dopamine conversation, the release of dopamine, and those positive social interactions transferred to the virtual world through our devices and our social media platforms. Each text message, email, like on Facebook, Instagram, X, becomes a positive social stimulus where we keep craving more. While all this may seem harmless on the surface, these cravings for virtual stimuli set us up for screen addictions and take the place of healthier face-to-face interactions with friends and loved ones and time spent outdoors doing other things. Screen time is on the rise. I can tell you that it went up dramatically during the imposed isolation. These numbers are interesting. They're not. They're really meant to raise your awareness.
Thanks for watching. We hope you enjoyed this video. And if you did enjoy it, please hit that like button and subscribe to our channel for more law practice and legal marketing videos. See you in our next clip.